It's Friday, February, what is it, 20th? 2 p.m. I call the meeting of the Land Use Working Group to order. First, I want to do a roll call who is present. Let's start. Rob Almeida is not here. Keith Slipping. Present. Paul Böhm. Here. Matt Boger. Here. Mary Hartman.
Here.
Judith Long.
Here.
Tracy Morano is not here. Mark Martinez.
Present.
Linda Miller.
Here.
Sven Weber here. So we have a quorum. First item on the agenda of the call of order is public comments. Are there any public comments? I see one in the room, so we know the drill, name, address.
Yeah.
Oh, and we have
Everybody
one
come
online.
here. Yeah, you
Okay,
should sit at the table so the owl can.
yeah, and limited please to approximately 2 minutes.
It should be less, but we'll try. Hi, Tanya Davis, 62 Prescott Road, and actually I will leave after this, but my husband Mark is online, so he will keep track. So 3 things. One is about the use of the farmland that is on 509 Bedford Street, Peter Spring. I think that should remain agricultural, and I understand that you have reached out to the agriculture committee for that reason, so that's great. So that's just an opinion. Others may say more about that. About the Ripley building, I have long thought that would be, in addition to whatever other uses it is also a good location for an emergency shelter for that part of town, because there isn't one there. There is Harvey Wheeler serves West Concord more conveniently, but. And my third concern is procedural. We are just finding out now. I know you have discussed it and had minutes and it's all on the records, but the specific locations should be listed on the agendas. And that's the open meeting law stipulates that the agenda should be specific enough so the public knows what people are talking about. And when I look at all the agendas of both the Public Works Subcommittee and the larger group, the subject of the discussion is listed, but the locations aren't listed. So when the public finds out too late in the process about what they should go and listen to, it can create something.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me unmute Mark.
Yeah, Mark Bayless online.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mark Galis, 62 Prescott Road. I wanted to say that I believe we should place a high value on keeping our agricultural land. When farmed land is lost, it is almost always lost forever. And it's an important part of Concord's heritage and an important asset for Concord in many ways. I also think that we should keep at a high priority to preserve open natural spaces, whether forested or meadowed, and not put new impervious construction on such places, but rather seek as much as possible to use existing structures and to construct new impervious buildings and other things on land that is either brownfields or has been previously, built up. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, let's move to the other comments. No, there aren't. Let's move to the next agenda item, approve of the meeting minutes. They were part of the package. I hope everyone had a chance to read through this heavy package. Mark Martinez, you have a comment?
Yeah, so I took a quick look at the February 6 minutes, and I appreciate there's a lot of content and discussion going on. However, I wanted to just note specifically that I
noted, and I continue to believe that one of the cons of putting the DPW at MCI is my concern that we need a significant amount of commercial space there. And I think there are industrial and other commercial uses that could be a good fit to be proximately located near the sand pits. And I was generally concerned when I heard that there could be as many as 20 to 25 acres of the 56 committed to, so the DPW, the wastewater treatment facility, and the sand pits. So I think that I and others raised that it would be helpful for that subgroup to identify how much acreage is going to be utilized currently today by the wastewater treatment center. Number two, how much is going to be utilized by the wastewater treatment center plus the sand pits? And then number three, what's the size of the acreage which has all three: wastewater, sand pits, and proposed DPW? Thank you.
Yeah, so Mark, we are at I think you have very good points, first of all, and I think there's some movements on the analysis of M7 since our last meeting. But as you're approving the meeting minutes of last meeting, is there specific wording you want to have added to these minutes? We can bring these comments you put into the minutes of this meeting, so it's documented, and Alan Cathcart sits in the room and he's listening too.
Sure, I'm happy to send a sentence or two. I'm happy to push it into these minutes.
Okay.
Again, it's sometimes awkward to put in a lot of detail into meeting minutes, but I just wanted to get my point across.
Yeah. So let's make sure these comments will be in the meeting minutes of this meeting. Any other comments for the meeting minutes of the last meeting? I don't see so. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second. Matt Borger seconded, so I do the roll call. Keith Berkman.
Aye.
Paul Böhm. Matt Borger.
Aye.
Mary Hartman.
Yes.
Judith Long.
Yeah.
Mark Martinez.
Yes.
Linda Miller.
Yes.
And Sven Weber, yes, and herewith approved. Okay, now let's go to the presentations from the subgroup findings. Where we left it last time was we went through the presentation layer of the fire and police public safety subgroup. So we finished that, but we didn't have time for deliberation. So the plan is to spend about 15 to 20 minutes in the group. Remind everyone where we left it, and then have time for questions and thoughts, and then we would go into the presentation and discussion of the municipal consolidation group. That's the plan. I will share the screen here on where we left it last time, and I hope not the entire screen. Let's do this one. Okay. I hope we can see this here properly. You want to take a lead on summarizing where we left it, Judith?
Sure. So on behalf of the public safety subgroup, which consists of Sven Weber, myself, Judith Long, and Mark Martinez, we spent some time in the last meeting reviewing a deck, which was appended to the agenda for anybody looking for a full deck. Also appended to the agenda was the full write-up of the subgroup report. For anybody looking for additional information, I point you to those two resources. And if you're having trouble finding them, I'm sure Shannon can help after the meeting. So our presentation really culminated in these findings and recommendations that we just want to review quickly as a launching point for discussion. So our first key recommendation was that we've done a tremendous amount of review, and we would recommend to the land use working group that we recognize that our public safety facilities, both Walden Street and Main Street in West Concord, are in urgent need of upgrading. So that's recommendation number one. Recommendation number 2 is based on our review of the existing sites as well as some of the opportunity properties that have been discussed here. So that would include Ripley School, Peabody School, MCI, 2229 Main Street, and so forth. That we have started to evaluate priorities based on the availability of those parcels and then looking at the existing parcels. And our recommendations for priorities based on that evaluation is that our first priority should be addressing the state of the fire station in West Concord. And we're recommending that there be a new fire headquarters evaluated for location in West Concord. The rationale for that is changing service demands and shifting population towards West Concord. So we're recommending that not only that we have a new fire station, but also that we make that the fire headquarters in town. Number 2 is that we're recommending that a new police headquarters also be built somewhere in town, which could be the existing site on Walden Street, but could be an alternate site as well. So that's the second priority. So fire HQ, then police HQ. And then the third priority is that we then consider the either renovation, upgrading, or replacement of the fire station in Concord Center to create a new fire substation, which is simply a smaller scale station for delivering public safety services in Concord. So that's the order of priority laid out in bullet 3. The last recommendation, which actually is showing under the next step slide, which I think is important to mention, Sven, if you can just pop down there 2 slides.
Right, just one.
There we go. Is that we are recommending that to the land use working group, and hopefully the land use working group will adopt our recommendation and forward to the select board, that steps be taken to establish a dedicated public safety facilities advisory committee to guide the next steps as regards replacing these facilities. And the urgency is that there's a fair bit of technical study that needs to be done, including response time studies, the existing building condition, particularly at Walden Street and so forth. We don't necessarily want to wait on moving forward with some of that technical work until the land use working group culminates in the summer. So we're going to recommend that move along a little bit more quickly because we have run out of runway in terms of technical data to make any more specific kinds of recommendations. So those are our recommendations. And then Sven, if you want to just pop up the slide that has the specific set of options, I think this might be the slide from which discussion might springboard as people may have questions or differences of opinion.
Mark has the hand up. Mark?
Absolutely no difference of opinion, Judith. However, not a however. Regarding the recommendation for a public safety land use committee to be established, do we have any input or recommendations as to how we think that should be filled? In other words, which candidates we may recommend to either continue to serve or specific holes in some of the sort of skill sets we have today that might be helpful for the town to have on that subcommittee?
I think that we're not quite at that point yet, but I think certainly if the land use working group at large picks up that recommendation, Mark, that we could certainly make some suggestions to the select board, but it will be the select board's ultimate decision to determine the composition of the committee.
Mary?
Thank you. Thank you for that. I agree with you of the urgency of the fire station. The one thing that one piece of work I think the larger committee needs to do before the select board were to appoint a committee to look at the fire station in particular is to talk about the timing of some of these things. And I just want to jumpstart a conversation we were going to have later, which is I originally came into this thinking that the fire station was urgent and important, and the land use consolidation was important but not urgent. And now I'm starting to think that if we really want to figure out how we're going to fund a fire station, once we find out how much it would cost to build, how much it would cost to acquire some land, we need to find ways to find that cash. And the municipal consolidation is one of the ways to unlock some cash within the town. So I think we still have some work to do to talk about the timing of the work going forward.
I think that the nice thing is when we have, let's say, today wrapped up with the presentation of the municipal consolidation group, we get a very good full picture of the different options and what might be available or to be discussed on where funds can be raised. My understanding is that in phase two, we will look at what can be recommendations of the what I call leftover or potential surplus properties. This is where this plays a major role. I understand also from what you probably will see in the presentation in a few minutes from the consolidation group that in your model we build in a lot of potential cash flow, what can be freed up in different scenarios. So I generally agree with you. The good and the bad thing is even if you put fire station and West Concord on the priority list number one, it takes a while. And in the same time, the town probably needs to have a parallel tracking around the consolidation on seeing how to raise the money for these options.
Yeah, I think at the end of this meeting, by the end of this meeting, we'll have a more granular view, Mary, of sort of the timing issues. But back to the options here. Forgive me if you already talked about, so one C versus one D. Did the group have a preference for either one of those?
I can speak to that quickly. So with respect to 1C and 1D, and for those of you watching online, hopefully that's visible. The difference is if we were to build a new station in West Concord, could we get it on the existing site and or some adjacent properties, or should we be looking at another site? The preference would be to stay on the existing site pending the acquisition of some of the adjacent parcels so that we could get a footprint large enough for the building. The existing site is about 1/3 of an acre. So when we say the existing site that the Main Street Fire Station sits on, it's tiny. And there's no rebuilding much of anything on that site. So 1C really implies acquisition of adjacent parcels in order to make that work. The reason why it would be preferred, if I'm anticipating your question, is that with public safety facilities, in particular fire stations, the notion that some of the negative externalities around noise, traffic, et cetera, they are already absorbed into the sort of perimeter of about 1,000 meters. They're already absorbed into that location. So everybody who's operating near that existing fire station is very accustomed to the land use attributes of how stations work, the sirens, the movement, the traffic, et cetera. So there's always a preference generally for land uses that have difficult negative externalities to maintain them in an existing site if those externalities are already absorbed. The other thing is, does the location work? And I think generally the location is okay, provided that with the acquisition of the larger parcels, we can change the site access using the access next to Dunkin' Donuts on Westgate, so that we can change the circulation patterns for larger trucks. So those are sort of the two reasons.
Yeah, you almost anticipated my next question.
Almost, I tried.
In terms of the adjacent land for 1C, is there enough land? I mean, you've established what the footprint of the ideal fire station, and can we get it out of that land?
Yeah, so again, this is just reasonable people taking a look at available data, which is very different from having an expert consultant, which is the next step. But certainly the fire chief and I walked the site with Sven, and we compared the available property and the configuration of the parcel to other fire headquarters in towns of a comparable size, or in many cases slightly larger, to try to determine if we had the space and the geometry for a fire headquarters with 4 to 5 bays, and we believe that we do. But then again, it really does rely on bringing.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail. My other question on Walden, preference is largely financial for renovating it all, because I think you had some mixed feelings about that, but if you had to renovate police versus fire. What, they're different requirements, what's your
So-
sense if you renovate for X?
Great question, right? So in general, when you're doing a renovation analysis, when we're looking at fire stations in particular, new fire stations are about $800 a square foot. Maybe up a little bit, although the news this morning, they bring prices down. But yeah, so we're talking about $800 a square foot. We think renovation of Walden would be about $600 a square foot. And there's kind of a rule of thumb in the construction industry when renovation exceeds 60%. If the renovation cost exceeds 60% of building new, typically the additional lifespan you get out of a new building makes building new a better choice. So that's point number one. And I think we're in that world where the renovation cost would exceed 60% of building new. So that's point number one. The second point is, and again, we've talked about this several times, and I still have to tell my husband because he drives by that building and he thinks it looks great, right? So I think we have to really help our neighbors understand that the building inside is not in great condition. It's in fair to good, depending on what part of the building you're in. The configuration of the building is unusual, which is to say a little funky because it's not a very deep site, but it's a very wide site. So the building is wide but not deep, which means that there are even the staircase placement and stuff. It's just an awkward footprint. So while parts of the theoretically could you renovate it even if the price was better, the footprint's really weird. So that's point number two. Point number three is even on the fire station side, unfortunately, and again, I did not know this until we went and toured the building. Much like we have height restrictions in the West Concord station, that means that we cannot have certain kinds of fire equipment and trucks. We actually have run up against that height restriction. I'm just looking at the chief, making sure I'm getting this right. We've run up against that height restriction in Concord Center as well. So the idea of building new would allow us to get to the capability to have the most modern and up-to-date technology in the building. So that's three
You
points.
don't have a renovation alternative, it's build new for police or build new for fire.
So
At the Walden.
we've kept it on the table because again, an expert might come in and see things that we're not seeing. And we want to, so we want to leave the opportunity for somebody to come in who is an expert in fire stations and police stations and say, oh, no, I can, there's a way we can make this work. So we want to leave it on the table, but this is very much something that a public safety advisory committee could then hire this person to come in and they should be able to see things that we're not seeing. And if there's an opportunity there, we'd love to explore it.
Mark, you have your hands up.
Yes, thanks. Judith, I guess following on Mary's comment, I guess I would maybe put the urgency of the fire department headquarters in West Concord as top of the list, potentially due to the fact that there most likely will be negotiation with third parties to acquire land necessary to have the headquarters in a reasonable spot in West Concord.
Yeah. Matt,
Yeah, sure. Three quick questions. So when you talk about, would you take down the building on the locations right now when you said build anew? So you would just take that down?
which one you mean, the Walden or
The one on Walden Street?
Yeah.
So that would be demolished and then you build from there?
if you build on the same location?
Right,
but
not
most
renovate the
likely
building.
if you split it up, let's
Yeah.
say you move to the other side of the street, there's this theoretical lot with the pump station that could be, let's say, the police station lot. You can build a police station there while the other is still operating.
Oh, still going?
Yeah, and then, so you have to look, this is then logistics again, where the experts will tell the town what is possible.
Hopefully you'd have the luxury of scheduling a moving day from the old building to the new one, rather than having to find temporary quarters.
Yes,
Tear the building down and find temporary quarters.
that would be the logistical
Yeah.
nightmare if you do it
I-
at the
I
same.
back in Littleton, and our fire department exited the old building, rented space in an industrial area,
Yeah.
which happened to have a huge thing available, but it was not every,
But building.
we don't have that opportunity.
Is there specifically for funding, would be advantageous to having fire and police in one location? so you get funding for two things opposed to one? And then is there, and I'm sure this is probably addressed, I apologize for not seeing it, is it advantageous to have the headquarters for police and fire, so there's more communication opposed to two different sections? I think it is nice that we have, West Concord and Concord. And then my third question is, and it's probably addressed somewhere else, is the regionality of it. If you were gonna put the fire station in West Concord, the proximity of Route 2 is very close. So locations like Lincoln or some other communities that don't have the economic viability of the population to have kind of a, you pay for 10%, but we can serve this community, and or Carlisle, which is a smaller population as well. I know that sometimes it's for federal funding, if you do a regional aspect, it's easier to get federal funding to buy a fire truck, which is very expensive, and or help fund them. So two questions there, sorry.
So, second question first, we didn't consider regionalization, that involves bringing in other voices, but certainly I think again, an expert consultant can let us know if that's a common best practice, and if so, let's explore it, right?
Yeah.
The first question, which I think actually the first two questions were similar in nature, the idea of is there an economy of scale or some kind of functional efficiency associated with combining the fire headquarters and the police headquarters? So from a cost point of view, surprisingly, we found that when they were combined, they were more expensive, which was surprising, right? Which may have to do with things that are not apparent from simply looking at a cost and a dollar figure and a site. So there may be specific issues with the site where they did it in Brockton or something like that, right? So it's kind of hard to unpack that. I think in a perfect world, our conversation, again, the chief's here, he might weigh in, but there certainly is some communication efficiency for having the fire HQ and the police HQ either in the same building or nearby. We actually found that in several other municipalities, they were pretty close together, if not next door, like in Natick and in or kind of down the street in Lexington, right? So there was a proximity advantage. It didn't seem as though there was a significant advantage on the spatial side, right? So the idea that you could have some shared conference rooms or training spaces. What we were hearing was that each function, fire and police, requires its own set of conference facilities, its own set of training spaces, even weight rooms and things like that were difficult to combine to achieve any meaningful economy of scale, which was surprising. We were kind of hoping that we could find that, but we didn't necessarily see it. And it may be evident in Walden Street as well, where I'm not sure that spatially that's been a huge efficiency factor, but I can see the chief is.
So while the chief takes a seat, so one thing you should keep in mind on the police side, police is more flexible where they are located, whereas the fire station needs to be as close as possible to where they have to react to. And we might have to just keep the police location in mind when we go also through the municipal consolidation presentation. Is there in these scenarios potentially opportunity to either locate the police in one of the buildings that's freed up, or in building scenarios they're discussing? Yeah, where we can then suddenly cross over from the work streams, and might be that they have the police moving into a building next to another building which becomes available and so on. And then that looks again different. Yeah.
Yeah, but just if it helps to answer, Chief Whitney, on the operational side too, just for people's background, if whether we're all together, police, fire, and emergency communications, or some together or some separate, we passed on to the committee that there's really no operational impact to that. So we don't need to be together for any operational impact as far as how we respond to the community. To your point, when we're together, it is a little bit easier from the administrative side. We can see each other a little more frequently, but we know that our relationship in town and how we work, I don't think that would be impacted by being in separate buildings. I think a lot of places, when they're together, it could be because that's where the land presented itself as the best opportunity for that. For that community. If it did for us, it'd be great. We have a great relationship, and being together is nice. But if we do operate 2 or 3 separate buildings, police fire dispatch, there'll be zero impact on how services are delivered in response to the community.
So I know the police have a spot in West Concord, right? They have like a little room that they pop in every now and
You
then.
can call it that.
A chair?
It's kind of it used to be a washroom specifically for the West
Yeah.
Fire Station, but it's a shared space that we use with our folks when they're doing some of their reports, and police will share some space up there, so they don't even have a dedicated spot there, we share it with them, which again, we do, we're both departments very open and happy to share like that, but some new communities, as we saw, they'll take to that point in an outstation with a dedicated office for police to use, a secure for them, a dedicated place they can use, and that's very easy to build into any substation.
Well, I was gonna ask if you have a preference, but I'm not gonna ask that. I do think, obviously, it's good to have a good relationship with the police and fire, you guys do stuff, but also just as a communal, like we work for the town, we do important stuff to have you guys in close contact and know each other, it's good, but.
A little story that we saw in other communities is there is some competition between police and fire. Who has the best fitness room?
Yeah, I'm sure.
There is some.
And then last question, and I wanna be very careful about this question in Concord, is height, right? Like how high you can have, so I think the current police station is maybe three or 4 stories. Three, there was so when we look at a location, making sure that it doesn't dwarf anything around there, but height, when you talk about land mass, height could be something to consider as well.
And setbacks, which I think.
I'm sorry?
And setbacks, and in the West Concord location, I think the setbacks would significantly help with the height issue around and raising issue around the building.
Okay, so we have,
It's just, if I could just point out, the irony might be that when we go to the consolidation report, and we're trying to get all of the rest of the town departments at a central location which would likely be in West Concord. I'm saying, not identifying particular areas. But if so, then and the only ones that we don't have involved in that are police and fire and DPW, so.
let's see where all this reconfiguration ends. Yes, it's a good observation. So I would propose we are moving forward to the next group, because we are starting to mix over and flow over to a combined discussions. So who's you taking the lead here in the room, Paul, or?
I'll take the lead, but Mary is my partner in crime here, so she'll weigh in at any moment she chooses here, but I'm sharing the screen here. Okay. This entire deck is in the packet, and I'm not gonna go through each piece in the deck here. I'm gonna kind of keep it at high level, but I do want to explain sort of what we ended up with in terms of recommendations, but not only what, but the why we went in that direction and sort of how we got there. There's much more in the report that's in the slide deck. For example, there's a lot of peer benchmarking and a lot of details on municipal office conditions that isn't in here, but it's in the report. So just some key items. I do want to start off by really thanking many members of the staff, Megan and Alan and Shannon, Kerry and others. There's a lot of data that went into this analysis. And I'll call multiple iterations of those data because we kept on asking for refinements. And there was a lot of patience in the staff in providing us with more and more information. So I want to thank those mentioned staff and those who fed information in there. And that information keeps coming in. We saw a letter from Dan Pettit from Council on Aging, which underscored the sort of, I guess, the conceptual nature of what we're going to present here. There's a lot of details, especially on exactly what space we need for exactly what pieces that aren't in here, but we want to say at a high level. So you'll see we sort of know how much space we need on a gross level, and we try to fit that gross space information into some building footprints, but there's a lot of planning that needs to go into, to answer the question, does it exactly fit? Okay, so let me just move forward. So we started out with, why we consolidate, and some of these are obvious, but I think just want to repeat those. There's an economy of scale. We are spread out municipally into multiple buildings, or 14 buildings and 18 departments, or is it 18 and 14? I lose track. We are spread out and historically, so just conceptually, there's a lot of opportunity for coordination and collaboration and increasing communications, and therefore efficiencies. Efficiencies yet to be determined, but certainly it's out there by putting a lot of people together, and especially putting the town municipal functions and the school municipal functions. What this embraces is a consolidation of not only the town municipal functions, but the school administration functions as well. So getting those all together in one area, if we can do that, we'll have, I think, great consolidation efficiency promises. And of course, repurposing and realizing the potential revenues. We touched on that a little earlier. We'll go into a little bit more detail here on just what that is, but there are significant revenues because we own property which has significant value. And if we could vacate that property and put it into a meaningful use, especially for housing, I think we would get, they would be attractive properties for private purchase and development. And then putting all municipal and school functions in one place would have, I think, advantages for the community. It would improve services, so people would know where to go, and the only thing would be to look at a directory in that building to figure out what floor they're on. So I think there's lots of reasons for that. The methodology was pretty detailed, and I'm not going to go into this, but I'll just mention there's a lot of data. There are a lot of conversations with town staff into what's in here and what's out, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And development of the strategies of just what buildings, what entities, what functions should be consolidated. There's a lot of conversations. There was a long list of those consolidation opportunities, both on which buildings could be vacated and which consolidation targets could be located. We had multiple site visits of all these locations, and we did do a significant effort both on the financial side and I'll call it on the soft side. You'll see that the recommendations are based on pretty good discounted cash flow model that Mary put together, and it's not a final financial analysis by any means, but it has some good assumptions, some good data in there, and it all have to be refined. But so I think the financial pieces of this are quite compelling in driving us towards a recommendation. And then on the qualitative side, we evaluate the pros and cons of location, of staff and staffing issues, et cetera. And importantly, we looked at the uncertainties, and we'll talk more about that. I'll invite Mary to weigh in here if I miss something, but the cash flow model was really intended to capture the benefits and costs over 10 years. The big pieces that went to that were details on the operational costs of all these municipal buildings. Russ helped a lot on that, Russ Carlstead, and there was lots of information, and those operational costs were very significant. So those inflows, what would it cost us to operate those buildings if we did nothing? And then on the inflows as well, what would it cost us to relocate, to renovate? And if we did new construction, what would it cost? And then on the outflow side, what revenues could we gain from the selling of various properties for their development? And those, we used estimated costs, and this is refinement. I think these are good estimates. We didn't just pull these out of the air. They're based on lots of conversations and lots of peer information, but the estimated costs of relocation, which are not insignificant, that people moving around and moving costs, the renovation costs of whatever consolidation target we had. You'll see we have several targets. The estimated cost of new construction, because we did, as you'll see, consider new building construction at a couple of sites. And then the market value of the vacated properties, and importantly, the estimated market value on the different zoning assumptions. And those zoning assumptions are really key to unlocking the value of these properties. Mary, I don't know if you want to weigh in anything.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. As Paul mentioned, the cash flow model is really just, it's a frame. It's a framework just to help us think through what are some costs we could avoid by consolidating, what are some cash flows we could unlock by consolidating, and it's based on a bunch of assumptions. As Paul mentioned, we did get good input to some of these assumptions, but they need to be we need to sharpen our pencil and get a better feel for some of these, especially the costs to bring Peabody and a potentially new or an existing building up to code. We also need to get a better estimate of the revenue that we would unlock from parcels of property within town at various zoning assumptions. And I know that we've got some RFPs in place to help us get cleaner numbers, but after all that is said and done, I think the way these options stack up next to each other is not going to change significantly. We'll get better numbers, but I think when you see the cash flows that we projected, when we look at our options slide that Paul will show later, I don't think that's going to change the order of the attractiveness of these options, looking at it from a purely financial perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's an important point. The unlikelihood that our analysis and recommendations would change. I mean, it's not zero, but this is a pretty solid, I think, pretty solid analysis based on solid assumptions and good estimates, but we'll leave it at that for now. So the consolidation candidates, and sorry if you can't see, so this is a map of all of our municipal locations. Ripley is not on this map, but Ripley is included. So we had conversations with Carrie about what might move and what might not move. For example, the townhouse would be partially vacated. The clerk's office and town archives would very likely stay there, but finance and other functions and the town manager's office would move. The assessor's office at Court Lane would move. The Kais Road complex is divided between two subcommittees. One is the Public Works piece, and so the 141 Kais Road has municipal planning and building inspection and public health, and those would move. 133 Kais Road, we haven't fully converged on this option, but the engineering side, the office side of which definitely coordinates with Public Works, but also coordinates with building inspection right across the street at 141. Those would move. 55 Church Street, Human Services would move. And when I say would move, this would be all the staff at these locations. So now we get into two areas, both Harvey Wheeler and Ripley, which have staff and programs. And so the staff, of course, Council on Aging staff, but we have senior services. We have space for senior services and senior programming, I'll call it. In Harvey Wheeler, we also have the Recreation Commission has a carousel preschool. That would move if Harvey Wheeler were vacated. In Ripley, similarly, we have staff from school administration where we have several different programs. We have the STEM lab, which is a significant lab. We have integrated preschool. So we have two preschools that are in this plan right now. And we're going to have to look more deeply into the feasibility of whatever consolidation location we focus on, whether those could accommodate the specifics of those preschools, not the square footage. I think we have the square footage covered, but the specifics and the specifics of the Council on Aging. The very thoughtful memo from Dan Pennant, which we got just recently, really elucidated the needs for Council on Aging and senior needs at a more granular level than we have planned. For example, for Harvey Wheeler, we took the gross space of all of Harvey Wheeler and we added 50% to that space. It's a lot of space, but is that enough? Right now, that's our assumption. We're gonna have to look at all these assumptions. I'll talk a little bit more about the space. So these are the consolidation candidates. You can't see the spreadsheet, but trust me, it's in the report. This was a compilation of all the input. So The total indoor space was about 47,000 plus square feet, of which some of that's staff, about 18,000 plus staff. So we took numbers of staff associated with all those operations I talked about, and we gave them all 150 square feet. And we revised that the 150 square foot per person was not the office size, but that was office size plus IT closets, plus conference, and that was space, so that would accommodate all the staff needs and meeting needs. And that was a good number. We have to re-examine that. The program space you see is larger. It's almost 29,000 square feet, and that's the school programs, the preschools, council on aging programs. So the total indoor space, which is about 47,000 square feet. We did not include future needs explicitly, but the building and a recommendation is a building that has not quite twice as much space as 47,000 square feet. So our recommendation will accommodate space needs going forward without being explicit about them right now. But right now, this is sort of current needs with some estimates. There's outdoor playground space, which we haven't fully resolved yet. That's pretty significant. There are 2 playgrounds, each 7,500 square feet. So I think this is the driver for our consolidation. So we just move to that. So there aren't too many areas or buildings that could accommodate that space. This is the long list, and the Peabody School building and or the site, the Ripley School building and or the site. When I mentioned and or, that could be a site for a new building construction. 222 Main Street was on a long list, but was X'd off of that long list. Let's see if I actually have that crossed out. Yes, I have it crossed out. We crossed that out. Magic of PowerPoint. It just, in terms of its location and capital costs and timing, we just took that out of contention. And then one that emerged fairly latish in our game was the purchase of a new office building, which was always kind of conceptually out there, but the more we looked at the cost, especially the revenues to be gained by the vacated properties, that option became very attractive. So these are a long list. We came up with 5 options, and the 5 options here were status quo. What if we didn't do anything? What if there was no consolidation? We didn't move. We continued along incurring costs, and we did. That's in our financial model. Option 2 was to renovate the Peabody School building to accommodate all the staff and needs I just talked about. Option 3 was knock down Peabody and build a new building. And this is the debate of new construction versus renovation construction and the cost differences. Option 4 was to build a new building at Ripley. In our site tour of Ripley, we did not think that renovation of Ripley, because of its strange configuration, honestly, would be an option, but building at that site could be an option. And then option 5 was to purchase and renovate an existing office building. And you see here in the subtext that each one of these has something to sell. If we did no consolidation, we could still sell Peabody for property for housing. Under option 2, we could sell Ripley, 141 Kives Road, 55 Church Street, Harvey Wheeler for housing, et cetera, et cetera. And you see, the more we get down to option 5 unlocks most of the potential in those properties for sale and for development. And all of our development here was focused on housing. What type of housing? Not to be determined, but you'll see in the financial modeling that Mary did, the zoning assumptions bore heavily on sort of the revenue potential. So this is the sort of the output of the cash flow modeling, and I just circled the model, the option 5, and the right hand column is the net of the outflow and inflow. And you see, under any zoning assumption, subject to the uncertainties that we have in this analysis, both of those zoning assumptions give us positive results. With a AA zoning, which is 1 acre, it's $4 million net over 10 years, and with with B zoning, it's almost $17 million. None of the other options are kind of cash positive other than B zoning at Ripley and with B zoning at Ripley, but the A zoning at Ripley was negative. So you'll see where this is kind of pointing on the financial side. And you'll have to take my word in going to the into the report, but we did a detailed evaluation of pros and cons. And this summary has the cash inflows and the costs. It has the net and then the pros and cons. And I'll blow up one piece of this just to see where to preview our preferred option is going to be option 5. And I just want to put up here what the pros and cons were. So the benefits of the option 5, which is the purchasing of the new municipal building, were the benefits of consolidation, which all of them had, but there's the large revenue potential. And also right now, those building, the building where you're looking at is 75,000 square feet, of which 45,000 plus or minus is available right now. The rest of it is leased, but those leases could lapse and be available for future expansion. But right now, the rent revenue potential balances the operating costs of operating those buildings. So that's a distinct advantage in the near term for that option. It is a central location of the municipal office building versus Peabody and Ripley, which are at both ends of town. There could be a faster implementation if we purchase a new office building. We could get things moving quickly while the renovation took place, subject to approvals of purchasing the building, and there'd be flexible timing in that as well. The cons on that is that at least in the short term, the town would become a landlord. The town is not in the business of being a landlord, but we'd have some leases to deal with. There are moving costs and their FFE costs, which are furnishing costs, but those are the same as any of our options. So the pros and cons chart was up there. We did a scoring matrix as well. We have various criteria, which are both financial and I'll call qualitative. On the staffing side, collaboration, efficiency, and staff satisfaction, which you lump together. Convenience for residents and sustainability issues. And the three of us, Tracy, Mary, and I, kind of sat around with this matrix and we scored them. We applied a weighting and we applied scoring. You see both the unweighted and weighted scores at the bottom here. And in all cases, the option 5, using both the financial criteria, which is the very first row, and the overall criteria came out far ahead of a second option, which is actually to build a new building at Peabody. But the cons, which I think go into the Peabody, which is significant in terms of location, sort of, I think, knocked out Peabody as our primary recommendation. So the primary recommendation is based on all the data is really option 5, which is to purchase and renovate an existing office building. And we have done some preliminary work in looking to the availability of the office building. But there are certainly uncertainties that can only be resolved in additional phase 2 work. And those uncertainties are, new construction costs. Because we have a new construction cost of buildings at Peabody and Ripley, we want to make sure we have those right. The renovation costs, we want to make sure we have those right. And space planning and market analysis. I think the space planning is really, now we've done that at a high level. As you see, we can kind of fit everything into these buildings, but whether we can actually plan for, especially the program spaces, is something that in phase 2 or beyond, a consultant's going to have to help us with, because we haven't kind of laid out, the buildings as if we would renovate them for real. So finally, it's the final slide. The next steps were, and I've kind of touched on these, to refine the estimates to renovate and bring the existing office building up to code. There's an RFP that Megan is working on right now to just define what that means to bring it up to code. Current code and what the costs are, and that bringing it up to code is targeted at the new office building and also Peabody, which is the other building that if we renovated it, we'd have to bring it up to code. We'd have to refine estimates to build new in Peabody. And then the detailed space planning, I think, is really important. As far as the implementation timing, and Mary touched on this, we may want to have some more discussion today and discussion beyond today. But the office buildings are not going to be on the market forever, and this is something that we probably have to decide in fairly short order and bring before the town to purchase that building and have funds for renovation. But the good news is at the same time, we could vacate Peabody and sell Peabody. And I think under the best zoning, I think there's $8 or $9 million worth of value in Peabody, and that's just an estimate, could be more. So the significant revenues to selling Peabody, which could balance at the same timing the revenues we might need for purchase of an office building. But along with that, we'd have to have zoning changes to maximize the value of Peabody and the value of Ripley as well. And then importantly, and even though these are public meetings and anybody can listen into it, I think there's a significant amount of public outreach and public awareness that we need to ask the select board to help us with in moving this forward. So I think that that is it. I think I just want to underscore the fact that we haven't planned explicitly for the future, but the office buildings that the one we are looking at is a 75,000 square foot building. And as you see, we're only going to need initially between 45 and 50,000 square feet. So there's a significant amount of space that we could grow into, which is probably not the case at Peabody. Peabody has more. Peabody has about 55,000 square feet, but it doesn't have nearly as much as sort of potential space as the office building. So that's another pro for that option. So that's it. That's what we got. Mary, anything else to add there?
No, that's great. Thank you, Paul. Good job.
So quick question on my side. Did you, because a new building, acquiring new building, you talked about the time sensitivity about that. Did you look at lease to buy option to potentially win time for the approval process, or how would you imagine an approval process to buy this? Do you need a special town meeting? How would that work?
Well, I think, I'll look to Carrie, but I think we would need a special town meeting for approval to purchase.
Yeah.
Lease to buy, we may still need approval. I think lease to buy would accelerate it, but I think the owner of the building, I think, is open to purchasing it soon. But Carrie, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, any funding is going to require
Yeah.
town meeting approval.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not winning anything with that.
No. Lease, and if, I think a purchase would give us more control in getting that building up to code. I mean, if we leased it, we still would have the code
Yeah.
issue to deal with. So, I think seriously, we'd have to move forward and purchase it.
And how does your recommendation look like? You can never be sure that a certain buy option comes together. So if that buy falls apart, what this is a discussion from the group is, are you waiting for another similar building to be available on the market, or are you then falling to the Peabody scenario?
Well, I think Mary and I have had this discussion. I think our plan, I think our plan B would be to look for another municipal building, because the revenue potential for this project and for other projects, we have to generate revenue for public safety as well. So this is a revenue generation opportunity if we purchase a municipal building. So I think Plan B would probably look for another building. But Mary, you want to weigh in on that?
No, that's right. You're right. We did talk
Yeah.
about that. Yes.
Mark, you have your hands up.
So Paul, in the when you did your cash flow model in your inflow column, did you also, is that net of the cost to service whatever development's going there? And so when I think of cost of service, I think about If it's residential, I think about educating kids. I think about public safety, police, fire, EMT support, sort of et cetera, et cetera. So, when we talk about inflows and outflows, is that a gross inflow or is that a net? So
well,
a classic example
I
that
don't-
the town
I
got
don't-
wrong.
I know what you're asking. We did not look into the implications of the housing on other services in town and quantify that.
So I think we really should. I think if you look at the Muse, and I think what was maybe portrayed as what the Muse was going to be, and what the services actually ended up being, and what the school population had was, I think that the town might have, not gotten that correct. And a related,
I would agree. I think we should do that. It's pretty complicated because there are differences of opinion whether, what the impact of housing is going to be on the schools, and we have a lot of school capacity, so we'd have to involve the schools in that discussion. And I think we have to involve the other two work groups. This is something that maybe phase two needs to.
Phase two needs to
tackle.
address that.
The impact of the municipal consolidation on the other pieces, and then the whole impact on town services. Yeah, that's a larger issue,
Yeah, so-
but it's real. I agree.
I think it should just be, sort of stickered clearly that it's not a net number. And is there any opportunity? I know that I think
Can I make a comment there? Can I
Yeah.
make a comment? If we do that, if we want to look at the impact on services, especially the schools, I think we also need to be prepared for the fact that we might have a decrease in population in our schools. We know we do. We know we're having a decrease in enrollment. And if we need to, so you might find instead of it being an increase to the costs, it might actually help us keep some of our school expenses where they are. So we should be prepared for both.
Yeah. You're mute, Mark. Mark, you're mute.
Sorry about that. So the only thing I would say is that with regard to the high school, I've heard a fair amount of, commentary that it is overpopulated as it is. So it will come as a welcome to both students and teachers that the school population go down. With regard to the 5 options, Paul, I think that each was the option was selling for housing. Is there any opportunity to sell for commercial use? Now, by commercial use, I don't mean retail or industrial, but I do mean assisted living, health related, 55 and over services. As a town, I think and I think the COA letter emphasized the point that I thought it was like 37% of our population is now elderly, if you will, and I think it's going to grow. So I think there could be opportunities if we are rezoning to rezone for non-residential uses that might be both fit relatively well as not being a strain on services. So for example, I was called a couple of months ago, or maybe a month ago, by a developer who said, "Hey, with regard to Peabody, how big is it? Because we have a private school that would be interested in buying it." So I think that it's maybe convenient to just not punt's the wrong word, wrong connotation, but maybe as a default say, oh, housing's easy. It's, of course, we could put housing there, and now we're debating what the zoning should be for the number of units per acre. But I think we are possibly doing ourselves a disservice if we don't think about some commercial, and by that I mean income generating uses that are not residential.
Well, I think if you hear something like that, it's always good to let the town know if there's general interest of someone.
Well, I
taking something
I
like that.
would say at some point we put out an RFP that is for sale, and we see what kind of offers we get, and we take the best offer.
And just keep in mind, private schools are typically structured as non-profits, so they will not pay ongoing taxes. So, but again, it could be all different. I think these questions fall all into questions we will have to discuss in phase 2, similar to what the comments we got on the egg fields earlier today. that are zoned right now residential B, but used as ag fields. As long as the town knows is what can be done with property and what then the select board decides to be done, and what the pros and cons are from a cash flow perspective. As long as the town knows what the options are and makes an informed decision, we can at the moment here collect the information. I think, Mark, your points are very good. They should be on the table for summary and discussion, and then see what the pros and cons of the different scenarios are, and also on properties, are they well located for other uses? Yeah, so if you're, I don't know, take 2229 Main, if the town would take that over, you want to put elderly services there or not? It's you have to think about what is the appropriate use for which location.
Yeah, and I think option 5 is gonna be the preferred option, no matter what those uses are. Yeah, I think that's gonna generate the most revenue versus the other options. So I think, as far as the recommendation, I think recommendation is fairly strong, but I think those numbers will change depending on a lot of different pieces. Mary, did you want to add something to that?
No, I want to make a different comment, which is housing in vacated land. And I almost hesitate to bring this up, but we've got MCI as well. We've got DCAM, which is very interested in building housing, if not at MCI, then somewhere else in Concord. So if we can build housing in somewhere else in Concord, that gives us a very good negotiating position to get more commercial development at the MCI parcel. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, but let's make sure that we're aware. We can't lose sight of the fact that we're negotiating with DCAM, and their main goal is to bring housing to Concord.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought it was great. I did a tour with DCAM and they said housing about 12 times. They're very focused on this. That's a valid point. So a couple things. A, this is a great presentation, specifically this cash flow thing. I know that's kind of broad numbers, but I think that's really strong, and number 5 does sound extremely attractive, seeing that location. So with that size, can we have that conversation we were having before with police headquarters? Could police headquarters be put into that location as well because of the large property? A, B, I know you said that the town doesn't really want to be in the leasing business, but it does seem to bring in some income, so that could be valuable. I don't know for you if you'd have fun staffing or that, but what your opinion on that is. And then C, timing, again, knowing where that location is, it is really ideal. And I'm trying to think about other locations that would be as ideal, and all I can see is those other buildings that are further north of that property. It does seem like a really unique opportunity, and since it's already constructed and the location for commuting and distancing, literally sitting between West Concord and Concord, although we are one community, is extremely valuable. So I concur with that. Number 5 is a really good adjustment. But A, the police. B, what is your opinion of becoming kind of a venue, an opportunity to get some income in a property that you guys oversee?
Yeah, do you?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think what I will say is in the building that we toured, the existing building, it did seem like there was an opportunity to co-locate a police headquarters. You know, we didn't look at anything structurally, or, you know, there may be space there may be another building adjacent to that, so I think there's an opportunity, but nobody's investigated that too much. We do have some very limited experience being a landlord. It is not easy. We're not really staffed for the landlord duties that we have right now. I think this opportunity is different than what we have right now. We have farm properties, and they, you know, we've got 3 different properties, so it would be different than this. So we would have to put together a plan so that we could make sure that we were attending to our landlord duties in a responsible way. And now I've forgotten if I was gonna say something else, but I'll think about it while Paul takes his turn and.
No, I think you're, we haven't considered public safety at that site. I remember touring that site, we looked over and said, why don't we put police over there? Jason, and there's some complications with timing on that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think you answered.
It did, and then I guess you just mentioned timing, like when are they eager to sell? Is it whether the timing aspect, I guess, is a little concerning because.
We could, they're anxious to sell, what we've heard. Yeah, we have a process to go through in the town. And I think the relations are good. I think they'd wait for us. I think that, I didn't get the impression that there's a lot of competition, but, you know, it's not gonna be available 2 years from now.
Yeah. So the select board has a warrant article on the annual town meeting to request a level of funding that we're still trying to size to do the next phase of all of this due diligence. With the intent that we likely would be looking for a spring 2027 special town meeting, kind of to pull together work at MCI zoning and all of this. And maybe at that point in time, we would be better positioned either to seek funding for it. Or, you know, maybe even purchase.
I think that there are timing issues that might ought to be discussed as part of an acquisition discussion that probably would have to be done in an executive session, but I don't expect that a particular opportunity will be on the market in certainly in 2027.
Yes.
Okay, Mark, you raise your hand again, or is it still up? I'm not sure.
No, just one quick comment, and it relates all the way back to, I think, public comment, in that I think that at least it's my opinion, that what this committee is trying to do is, or this group is trying to do, is really hard, right? Of course, we'd all love to protect as much conservation land as possible, the agricultural land, the recreation, get as much housing as is gonna work. You know, we talk about door heights and we talk about historic districts, what have you. I think at some point this group should go on record, and maybe part of it should be part of the report, is to say that, you know, it's what we're doing is hard, and something's got to give. So if that give is DPW going on Bedford Road, that's where it is. At some point, it's sort of the urgent need for public services and facilities for those public services that, you know, we're trying to take very seriously. And we're trying our best not to step on particular toes or compromise values, but it may not be possible. So, my 2 cents. You know, Sven, I mean, it comes back to our conversation. I think we were talking about that, you know, Concord has, what, 40% of our land is conservation land? That's a big number. So if we need, you know, some small point, some fraction of a percentage for our new, you know, police facility, I would be on the side of, you know what, not ideal, but makes sense.
If
I just wanted to make the comment that it's very important that we get, that this committee, the full committee, adopt a comprehensive set of recommendations, and I'm loving all the work that's been done at the subcommittee level. And because the community is looking for this working group to come up with the master strategy for all of the affected properties, and it's a lot of moving parts there, but it's important that the community sees how they all fit together, that you can do this here, you can free up a bunch of town-owned buildings by consolidating at a particular location. That's an important thing to know. There's gonna be a lot of reaction to that. Some beloved brick buildings that suddenly aren't, you know, gonna be wouldn't be town owned or so. But it's hard, and as well as what Mary says about I think it's very important for some transparency on what's going on with MCI Concord and between the town and the state. Because if the freed up properties here help accomplish goals of as Mary said, moving housing, some housing off of MCI to other locations, that's gotta get out there too, because that's not in the public mix now, but a lot of moving parts here, great work that's been done by the subcommittees to bring us to this point. I include the DPW that we've also seen, but it's important that we get the master strategy out there, and so people won't be picking apart, well, they will be picking apart particular things, but that it's important that this is a well thought out master plan that is can be amended, but that the parts are meant to all fit together.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. We know the pieces fit together really nicely here, but only kind of, we know that, and we have to kind of show the public what these pieces are. That, we're generating revenue that we're gonna need for other purposes, and which is why I think that the generation of revenue from some sale of some property sooner than later to prove this model can work, I think it would be important.
Yeah, what I see right now is where we started in July last year. I think that the overall, I used at that time, I think that the framework of the puzzle. At that time, all the puzzle pieces were just lying around upside down. Nobody really knew what is going on. I think we got the sense in where the puzzle is building. There's still variations, and some puzzle pieces might not yet fit 100% here or there, and we're still playing around. But given the work of the three subgroups, we see kind of major streams. We see the pictures built in this puzzle. And then now the work is what we do now as co-chairs, talking about a little bit about next steps, is over the weekend we will bring these three things, these three reports together into one comprehensive kind of phase 2 interim report, phase 1 interim report, because we still have phase 2 towards the final report for the select board on Monday. There will be also a short presentation to FinCom on Thursday, because all of this has larger capital planning. And then we have to, in the next coming 3 months, we have to go through exactly what Keith also said. It's like, okay, how is this whole picture coming together? Let's say, assuming option 1 and 2 for each of the work streams, what is taken, what do you need to have in place, what is available, what are potential uses, what do you give on one end, what do you take on the other end, what is the reserved property? We also have to think about reserved property, talking and addressing concerns like Mark brought up, is what happens if the math didn't work out and suddenly it needs another school? Where do you place it? So these discussions we have to have after we have kind of large pieces of the puzzles put together to bring the picture together. In that period, as I said, we start getting feedback from select board, FinCom. We have to talk. We will have the committee coming to talk about that specific field. To have a little presentation here so everyone hears their concerns, and we have to get community input. We will not have the chance to do kind of broad road shows and so on. This will be the task of following and a working task force on specific things. But Keith had a good point. We need to have the full picture. If you only silo it, then you have fights in silos and people lose the overall part. Mary, you have your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. I've heard some good things. I think Keith brings up a really good point that we need to start letting the public know what the work we're doing here. I think the subcommittees have done fantastic work. I think the staff has done fantastic work. And at the end of the day, though, we need to go to town meeting if we want a zoning change or if we want money. So I'm wondering, when you come to the select board on Monday, this is a question, are you envisioning outlining what you think the next steps are and what you hope to achieve in phase two? Or because I know we talked about rewriting the charge, and I just want to make sure that we're clear that we can scope out what this group can do, the larger land use working group can do by the summer. Are you
So I
planning?
think is for Monday is mainly is bringing the whole select board up to speed and having this interim report of phase one.
Yep.
In front of there, collecting any questions or feedback that coming from that group. Similar for the FinCom, that if there are major questions, that we have it. And the next round would be do a kind of a final review based off on the feedback we got on these kind of high level recommendations, and then as outlined go into what is this overall picture looking, and where are the main activities, what are follow-on activities based on specific let's say building committees or task forces, and how what are the critical items in there that need to have significant community input, like rezone. If the recommendation today is to rezone to a residential B, what is double A today, we know rezoning is not easy, and you need to have the buy-in from that respective neighborhood for that.
Just want to say, take a look at the select board packet, because you're in the agenda right before Elisa and Megan, and Megan they're going to talk about Article 12.
Yes.
And there's a significant overlap.
Yes.
So next steps are implied in that. So take a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went already a little bit in next steps, but just trying to close up questions on the presentation from the consolidation group. Any other questions, concerns? Doesn't look like you did a great job here. This is.
The burning concern that I have is the assumption that we made about we're going to move all these pieces and they're all going to fit. I think we have to decide sooner or later whether is it sooner or later whether it all fits, or whether we can't accommodate the senior center, can't accommodate the classrooms. Does that come later or sooner? I don't know. It just we've done the space planning at a very gross level, but we have to start really thinking about, and it would all fit into this new building. So I mean, I think that decision is independent, but I just want to make sure that when we move this forward in some public manner, we're not stepping on our toes.
I think on the municipal consolidation on this side is I typically have generally the philosophy, and I don't know how others think about this. When you have something that looks too good to be true, most likely something goes wrong with it. And it could be it's good for 90% of what we want to achieve, but let's say the preschool might be a challenge, or the COA might be a challenge. So we will face something where most likely the town will have to think, okay, there is perhaps we get the solution for 90%, but there's this 10% saying we need to find something else, or which stays where it is right now. The one question I have still on the municipal consolidation group is on moving the school administration out and the preschool out of Ripley. Does the school has right now plan from the school sounds to be stay in Ripley and just don't do fixes and stay there? Are they full behind just getting moved out, or do they have a plan B if this is not going to happen?
You probably
Yeah,
The schools, as far as I'm not behind, has the school committee taken a vote on it? I don't think so, but my understanding, the chair has said she's brought it up. She's briefed the school committee, there's no pushback, she's mentioned to the superintendent. I think they're on board with this.
Okay.
But, they have to know that all those pieces can fit, to this point. So right now, there's no reason to doubt that they're on board. but, yeah.
I wonder in terms of procedure, if as regards the purchase of an existing office building, it makes sense to recommend to the select board that a working group be designated under the auspices of one of the staff members, which then takes it out of the committee setting and puts it into a, so if it's Carrie or whoever you want to designate to explore that acquisition, if it's done as an advisory to a staff member. And there could be members of the municipal consolidation working group or other folks involved in advising a staff member with regard to the acquisition, simply because it allows work to be done outside of open meetings. Outside of the open meeting law, because now we want to start talking about doing space planning in the building, which, by the way, any commercial broker will work with you on that, and they have software and there's all kinds of things that they can do for us in that regard. But if all of that information has to come back through committees, and if work can only be done at the committee level, then we're not gonna be able to do it by, say, July. So I'm just trying to think, how can we free
Well,
up town staff? to do
Megan,
this work?
Megan is finalizing an RFP to go out on the code, getting the cost estimates on the code.
Which is slightly different.
It is slightly different,
from
but, there's no reason why we couldn't add scope on that to do.
Well, I don't even know that we would need to go outside to do that. I mean, I do think that there are customary aspects of code requirements in space. I think unusual things are classroom spaces at the preschool level. There are design requirements around those kinds of uses that have to be sorted out. And I'm just saying that if everything has to percolate into this committee where we have to be in an open meeting situation to be able to make deliberations, I'm just not sure that's the most efficient way to now look at the acquisition of this building. So I would encourage us to think about a way that's going to be more expedient and responsive to the timeline. So that's what.
But the specific planning on that, I don't want to burden the staff with that task. I think that's a tailor-made for an outside consultant to get that piece of work done sooner than later.
I completely hear you, Paul. My issue is that, or what I'm seeing as a potential issue is that the ability to get committee members to meet on a regular basis, whether it's 2 weeks, every month, and to filter the information through that committee in order to make recommendations to the select board is going to push us to a window where conceivably that opportunity for acquisition may no longer be on the market. So I'm
Could
just
we have
saying.
a consultant that just report, could we have a consultant that helps a staff member so we have a direct line? We don't have a committee, we don't have open
Yeah.
meeting law, but we have a staff member who's the point person to the select board, but has the help, the expertise, the knowledge of a consultant in this field.
Yes,
So I like that idea a lot.
yeah,
Yeah, so staff member, the consultant.
Yes, and
Oh, yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
they come
Yeah.
back to the committee,
Yeah.
but there can also be select board members and members of the community, and the school board can also be part of a subcommittee so designated by that staff member to advise them that I'm not looking to do a workaround about public about open meeting law for the sake of transparency. It's from the sake of expediency, right? Like if we try and do it through a committee structure through the land use working group, we're not going to be able to have recommendations probably for another 4 to 6 months,
and
right?
we are not set up for
Yeah.
negotiations.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
going into
Yeah.
setting the town up for
We're the
negotiations.
idea people, here's the idea,
Exactly.
Yes.
Let's
we
have
like it,
Yeah,
run,
Select board.
Run with it.
they can run with it,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know,
And
it's
we'll-
bringing up for me, oh, sorry, Keith.
Yeah,
You done? Are you done? Okay.
I was
It's
just saying that we'll hear how it goes. We don't need to be at the table.
Yeah.
I agree. I think for me, it's bringing up a bigger issue, which is what we've heard many different ideas for committees going forward, different ideas about what the staff is going to do. I think this is something that the select board really needs to wrestle to the ground as far as, what committees, if any, do we have going forward? What is their charge? What is their role? And that's on us, Paul. I think we've got to figure out how to move forward, how much involvement we need from citizens, how much we need involvement from staff, and how we scope the work so that we get things done.
Oh, absolutely. And the only reason I'm a broken record about this detailed space plan is because that's a short-term decision. We have to make, will we buy this building or not?
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
We need to know what's cost on code, and we need to know we can fit this into it. You know, it's not, it's kind of a short-term decision, relatively short-term decision, relative.
Yep.
Okay. Good, so that's around the municipal consolidation. We already touched a little bit on next steps, so that is, we get feedback from the select board, most likely questions around capital expenditures and timing on Thursday. We are consolidating the 3 reports to a phase 1 interim report. And then we haven't synchronized it, but I took my head a little bit out here to think about that. For the remainder of the time for phase 2, I think is probably we give us a little bit of room, not meeting again in 2 weeks, but perhaps in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks from now, and entering phase 2 and saying, okay, as we prepare this, these are the main roads we are going based on the work of the 3 subgroups. This is the list of properties that are earmarked in some way or the other. So we just keep them for these options that are identified. And this is the list of properties that is under discussion and review what can be done with that. And then I know that Mary and you, Paul, you did a lot of work with the consultation group in looking at the potential value of some of these already. So there's a lot of work already done on that. And perhaps we can base on that for most of these properties already to get the committee a sense of what are these different properties, what could they be valued, what could be used, could it be housing, could you free up or make something available for commercial, or have negotiation positions with DCAM to have more commercial over there. Reserve property, what do you do with ag fields? Because that property at least is on the list. So that we have this discussion, and that might be another kind of 3 meetings in total we have to go through, and hopefully with that, at the end of that, we can wrap this thing in something like Keith said. This is the overall vision where this goes. Of course, you will get headwinds in some of these things, and it doesn't mean that the path we will lay out in 3 to 4 months from now is where it is 100% executed and gives a direction for the town staff, for the select board, but at least for a certain time, go in a certain direction, learn more and adjust while you're going forward. Is that in general? So, and that would mean another like 3, maximum 4 meetings in the next 3 to 4 months. Just to set expectations for the group. Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, for schedule, we will look, given that we're right now in the hearing mode, we most likely will just synchronize, Julie and I will synchronize with Jen and look on where's room for meetings. Where we do not conflict with public hearings for the town meeting and so on. So we will come back to you on that.
Okay.
Any other comments? No?
This has been an exciting process, kind of. It's been busy, exciting, but lots of good ideas and percolating with all the groups. It's really important stuff, really important. And we're not going to solve all problems in the next year. This is a long-term planning effort.
What I think I said it somewhere, what I like is that I think really everyone in this group learned something in that process, and even some adjusted positions they came in with and or preconceived conclusions. You often think, okay, when you do this, you do that, and then you start thinking, looking at the numbers, looking at the options, and you start adjusting to it. And I'm amazed at how we were able to just let this information, as much as we had, we are not perfect with the information, but let us guide purely on the information and not necessarily on preconceived politics or other things. So I really like that process so far.
I think it would be important to have our website updated with some of the broad brush recommendations that are coming out here. The slide, there are like, there's one slide probably in each of the presentations that has it all, and that information needs to be seen. But we've hardly been doing this in private, that I watch the subcommittee meetings on YouTube and feel fully briefed, and grateful for not having to sit through the meeting, but watch it at my convenience. But that information's out there. There's been coverage of what we're doing. Now we just need to get it out in a summary form for the public.
Okay. With that, it's 3:36.
And it's it's 37 degrees and it's doing that out there. How's that?
Snow's outside. Let's adjourn the meeting. I just want to be sure. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
The chair.
So moved.
Chair can adjourn.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to
Sure.
be consistent. You do it consistently like that in the Public Works Commission, and let's do it like that. So second. So Keith Bergman,
Aye.
Paul Boone, Matt Bober,
Aye.
Gary Hartman,
Aye.
Judy Long,
Aye.
Mark Martinez,
Yes.
Linda Miller,
Yes.
Sven Weber, yes.